I think that what most people can objectively say about this potential indictment is that it's based on very little law and a lot of politics.
Well, it's very odd that this would come out just the very next day after I revealed bank records, which showed that the Biden family, the president in particular, hasn't been truthful with respect to his family receiving payments directly from the Chinese Communist Party.
What Alvin Bragg is doing is wrong. He shouldn't be going after Donald Trump, period.
Legal experts, GOP lawmakers sounding off after former President Trump said that he expects to be arrested tomorrow over an alleged hush money payment he made during the 2016 campaign 7 years ago. President Trump posting on his Truth Social, the most important witness in the case will be testifying today. The former president referring to Robert Costello. That's Michael Cohen's former legal advisor. Trump also says Costello will provide information that is supposedly conclusive and irrefutable. Joining me right now is former acting U.S. Attorney General Matt Whitaker. Also joining the Hot Topics all morning long is Lee Zeldin, Michael Balboni, and Barry Knapp is here as well. Great to see everybody. Thanks for joining us. Matt, first off, your reaction to what we're expecting tomorrow.
Well, you know, for almost 250 years, our constitutional system, separation of powers, not only between the federal government branches, but the states and the federal government, has worked, but it's relied on people in these positions using judgment and discretion. And Alvin Bragg, I think, may break the system if he goes forward and indicts President Trump on such weak evidence. You know, ultimately, there are so many hoops that he has to jump through to prove his case. And he has spent his entire time in the DA's office in New York City targeting Donald Trump, and he thinks he has the goods. But this is going to be very difficult for our country moving forward if this happens.
Well, what about the statute of limitations? Is that 2 years? This happened 7 years ago. They had a non-disclosure agreement that apparently he was paying money, and she was not to speak about it.
Yeah, so the analysis on that is if it's a misdemeanor crime, which means just the alleged falsification of business records, that's a 2-year statute of limitations. That's clearly expired. The more interesting situation is the 5-year felony, which requires another crime that would be in furtherance of another crime to falsify those records. And I think what they're targeting is this idea of campaign finance violations. But remember, the John Edwards case definitively demonstrated how weak that claim is. In fact, when I was at Attorney General, the Southern District of New York looked at that violation and determined there was no crime that was committed. So on federal law, the feds are the experts, and they've already determined this isn't a crime. So I just, again, you're right. The statute in both misdemeanor and felony has run most likely.
So House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is ordering the House to investigate whether federal funds were being used during Bragg's investigation. President Trump claims that President Biden stuffed the New York City DA office with DOJ personnel from Washington. I want to get your take on that, Matt, but Lee Zeldin, weigh in on that and assess this. What do you make of all of this?
It's a political prosecution. And when there's a federal campaign that is going on, you have investigations that might be conducted by the Federal Elections Commission, the FEC. If there are federal crimes, maybe there'd be an investigation from the Department of Justice. But for some county district attorney, all of these years later, fulfilling what was a campaign promise when he was elected, this is clear political prosecution, and a lot of people are enraged, stating the obvious here. I think this just doesn't pass any smell test, nor should it.
Now, this is the guy who said he didn't want to prosecute criminals, and he has bail reform in place where you're getting processed and going right back out on the streets and committing more crimes. When you were running for governor, you said you were going to fire this guy on day one.
That's right, and I would have, and he's just refusing to. From day one, by the way, of his time as district attorney, he issued what was a day one memo. All different crimes across the board he would not enforce. All sorts of other crimes he would treat as lesser included offenses. You would cover the Jose Alba case. So he was this Dominican American who got attacked here at a bodega. And Alvin Bragg slaps him with hundreds of thousands of dollars of bail, throws him on Rikers Island, open stab wound, doesn't charge the person who stabbed him. So there's so many different cases where people have seen less safe streets, They feel like the streets have been turned over to criminals instead of law-abiding New Yorkers. And as you see a district attorney who refuses to prosecute violent criminals, it makes you even that much more outraged that you're here with this political prosecution.
That's right. Michael Valboni, what do you think?
So you know, what the city's doing right now is they're taking a look at what the ramifications could be in terms of protests right now.
Yeah.
So since Friday, the law enforcement personnel, Secret Service, FBI, NYPD, who are very experienced at this, are kind of bracing for whether or not there's going to be political protests on both sides.
Yeah.
You know, when you have a figure of Donald Trump, he's incredibly polarizing, both positive and negative. And so that's what the city's looking at right now. And they're wondering whether or not it would just be around the courthouse or whether it could be something more extensive.
Yeah.
And given, again, the numbers, you know, they have to prepare.
Yeah, and that is why the Journal op-ed this morning, Alvin Bragg's political charge against Donald Trump, basically writes that, you know, this is going to rally up his supporters to the extent that you'll put him back in the White House, according to the editorial board.
It could certainly make him a martyr.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
it's perceived not to be totally false and political, and boost him.
Matt Whitaker, final word here from you. Tell us what to expect tomorrow.
Well, it's going to be a circus. If he is arrested, if he goes through the process of fingerprinting, mugshot, and handcuffed and perp walked, that is going to be an image that is obviously used politically against Donald Trump, but also, to your other panelist's point, is going to galvanize the base that supports President Trump, knowing that he is being politically persecuted.
Yeah. All right. We will leave it there. We'll continue this conversation throughout the show. Matt Whitaker, it's good to see you. Thanks very much for weighing in